Welcome to HD Rare Coins, your ultimate source for rare coins, fascinating history, and the thrill of discovery. From legendary pennies to hidden gems, we explore the world of numismatics one amazing coin at a time. The penny slid silently across the counter, almost unnoticed. It landed near the edge of an old wooden till, blending in with its copper cousins, small, simple, humble. It was 1964. The Beatles were taking America by storm. Lyndon B. Johnson had just signed the Civil Rights Act, and the United States was humming with change. A loaf of bread cost 22 cents, a gallon of gas 30 cents, and yet, this tiny coin, just a single cent, carried more weight than anyone could have guessed. It wasn't a coin that shouted for attention. It didn't glitter like silver or gleam like gold. But it would become, in time, a symbol of value hidden in plain sight. That penny, born from a press deep inside the U.S. Mint, was not just one of billions. It belonged to a generation. A year of transition, of urgency, and of subtle revolutions in American coinage. The 1964 Lincoln cent was more than currency. It was a witness. To pocket trades at school, to jukeboxes playing Sam Cooke, to letters sealed and stamped with care. Each one held not just copper, but history. It had been more than 50 years since Abraham Lincoln's face first graced the obverse of the 1-cent coin, back in 1909. The decision to feature him had been both revolutionary and controversial. No living or former president had ever appeared on a circulating U.S. coin until Lincoln. But his legacy, his leadership, his sacrifice, was immortal. Sculptor Victor David Brenner had designed the original coin, etching Lincoln's solemn, watchful gaze into American hands for the first time. By 1964, Brenner's design had become familiar. Comforting. Timeless. But behind its familiarity, the Mint was preparing for changes that would ripple through numismatic history. In early 1964, the U.S. Treasury faced a growing coin shortage. Americans were hoarding silver coins, anticipating a reduction in silver content that would soon arrive in other denominations. The mints were operating at full throttle. Philadelphia and Denver were producing cent coins in record-breaking numbers, over 6.4 billion in total for 1964. But even with such staggering output, something extraordinary still happened. Among the flood of pennies, a few stood out, not because they were meant to, but because chance had chosen them. Some bore subtle misalignments. Others had extra metal, tiny blobs forming on the date or near Lincoln's bust. A handful displayed doubling on the inscriptions. "In God We Trust" seemed to have a shadow. The "fort" in 1964 looked like it had been drawn twice. These errors, rare and beautiful in their own right, became whispers passed between collectors. Whispers that eventually became stories. Stories that turned into legend. One such legend began in Ohio. A teenage boy named Carter found a 1964 penny in change from a local diner. It looked like any other, until he noticed something strange. The back, where the Lincoln Memorial stood, shimmered oddly under the sunlight. The columns looked doubled. The steps of the memorial, usually soft and smooth, had crisp, almost serrated edges. Carter, intrigued, saved the coin in a matchbox. Years later, while helping his son with a school project, he remembered it. Under a magnifying glass, the detail took his breath away. He sent it in to be graded. The verdict: 1964 double die reverse, MS66 read, population 1. Auction value $81000. Another coin surfaced in Arizona, this one with a misplaced date. The 1 in 1964 appeared to be struck over another number, an error known as an overdate. While no official overdates were confirmed by the Mint for that year, speculation swirled. Was this a transitional die reused from an earlier production batch? A technician's last-minute improvisation to meet demand? Or something stranger, an experimental strike that slipped past inspection? The coin was purchased in a private sale by a collector in New Jersey for $49,500, adding another page to the growing mythology of the 1964 penny. But it wasn't just errors that brought attention to this coin. It was condition. Most pennies entered circulation quickly. They rubbed against other coins, wore down in vending machines, or sat exposed in car cup holders. A cent that retained its original red copper luster, unmarred by time or fingerprints, became a unicorn. And so, collectors began a quiet war, chasing red designations. Coins graded red, RD, by professional services like PCGS or NGC indicated full, untarnished brilliance, exactly as the coin appeared when it left the die. Finding such a coin in uncirculated rolls was like striking oil. A man named Daniel, a Vietnam veteran, had returned home in 1969 and started saving coin rolls as a way to stay grounded. He worked in a local hardware store and bought fresh penny rolls every month. He never opened them. Just labeled them and stored them in a metal lockbox. For decades, they sat untouched. In 2020, his grandson opened the box out of curiosity. Inside was a sealed Federal Reserve roll marked 1964 D. The coins inside were untouched by human hands. The best one? MS-67 red, full strike, die Polish lines visible. It sold $4/$112,000. The 1964 penny's journey wasn't just about flaws or flash. It was about timing. It was the last year the U.S. Mint used coins dated 1964 before transitioning into special mint sets in the following years, and it was right before the Mint officially abandoned the practice of hand-punching mint marks, changing how errors appeared forever. It was also the final gasp of a slower, more hands-on minting era. After 1964, mass production would become even more automated, and the days of subtle craftsmanship were gone. Every collector knows that 1964 was a tipping point, and that's why these pennies matter. Not just as currency, but as relics. As time capsules. As artifacts from an America both optimistic and uncertain, on the edge of war, of civil change, of technological explosion, and in the middle of it all sat a penny, not flashy. Not rare by mintage count. But rare in meaning, rare in the few that survived untouched, rare in the few that slipped through the cracks, bearing double dies, off-center strikes, or strange shadows of overdates, and rare in the way they still make hearts race and eyes squint, because somewhere, right now, in a forgotten jar or taped to the inside of an old birthday card, there may still be a 1964 cent. Not just any cent, the cent. The one with an error no one's seen yet. The one graded perfectly. The one worth not 1 cent, but $115,000. Inside the great minting halls, where copper and steel breathed under mechanical lungs, the presses never stopped. Each 1-ton machine was calibrated with precision, yet in 1964, they were operating at a near-frantic pace. The demand for coins was overwhelming. People across the country were holding on to nickels and dimes out of fear that silver would soon vanish from circulation. To compensate, the U.S. Mint doubled down on production. And nowhere was that pressure more visible than in the making of the humble penny. In Philadelphia, die technicians sharpened tools day and night. Blank planchets, the round, flat discs that would become pennies, clinked in buckets like rain. The process was rhythmic and brutal. Blanks were fed into presses where obverse and reverse dies collided with up to 60 tons of pressure. With each strike, Abraham Lincoln was immortalized on one side, and the proud Lincoln Memorial on the other. It was a dance of force and finesse. But in the midst of that choreography, something remarkable happened. Even with billions of coins minted, no two strikes were exactly alike. A die slightly tilted would produce a coin with a marginally off-center profile. A damaged planchet might flatten Roosevelt's ear or stretch the memorial steps. And sometimes, just sometimes, two coins would emerge bearing the rarest of anomalies, a doubled image, a die crack, or a misplaced mint mark. These weren't errors to the eye of a casual spender. But to a collector, they were whispers of history. Hidden signatures of the mint's most human moments. Take, for instance, the curious case of the 1964 floating roof cent. It wasn't discovered until decades later, when a group of hobbyists on an internet forum began sharing close-up photographs of their finds. On some of their 1964 Lincoln Memorial cents, the roof of the building didn't quite connect to the columns. It appeared to float, detached, as if lifted by an invisible force. At first it was dismissed as die deterioration. But soon, a pattern emerged. Specific dies, produced during a particular window of Denver minting, had polished away the connecting lines between the roof and the columns. It wasn't a manufacturing defect. It was a marker of rarity. A micro-era within a single year of production. And when one such coin surfaced in brilliant uncirculated red, MS-66 with full details, it sold $4.9, But that was just the beginning. The real hunt began when people realized how many small variations existed within the 1964 penny series. Some had what looked like ghost dates, where the final digit, the 4, seemed thinner or weaker than the rest. Others had repunched mint marks, where the D had been struck twice, once slightly east, then corrected. These were not fanciful errors. These were catalogued, verified, and hunted like treasure maps in plain sight. One collector from Colorado, an ex-postman named Mike, made it his mission to find every die variety of the 1964 cent. He spent years combing through bank rolls, gas station trays, estate sales. He documented 37 distinct varieties, each with unique diagnostics: minute die scratches, cracks near Lincoln's jacket, extra metal near the memorial steps. His dedication earned him respect in numismatic circles. But his breakthrough came when he discovered a penny unlike any he'd ever seen, a full red Denver strike with bold doubling not just on the obverse, but faintly mirrored on the reverse. The coin, upon grading, stunned the numismatic community. It was confirmed as a newly discovered double die obverse and reverse, DDO/DDR, MS-67 red, the only one of its kind. Experts described it as a once-in-a-century specimen. It sold in a private auction for $131,000, making it the most valuable 1964 penny ever recorded. Stories like Mike's traveled far. More people began looking. And as eyes sharpened, so did the understanding of just how complex a year 1964 really was. It wasn't just about volume. It was about transition. It was the last year the U.S. Mint produced coins for general circulation before pausing dated production in 1965 due to the Coinage Act. It was also the final full year before special mint sets replaced proof coins temporarily. These overlapping shifts created a storm of confusion, especially among new mint workers in Philadelphia and Denver, leading to inconsistencies in die use, repunching, and even some mismatched combinations. A mystery emerged surrounding a small group of 1964 pennies with unusually deep strike pressure. On these coins, Lincoln's jawline appeared more pronounced, and the motto, "In God We Trust," seemed almost embossed. Researchers traced these coins to a short-run batch likely struck using reworked proof dies that had been mistakenly cycled into general production. These proof-like circulation strikes, unofficial and undocumented, commanded huge premiums. The best-known example, graded SP65 red, sold through a boutique dealer in 2023 for $86,000, sparking a new wave of searches through old mint sets and BU rolls. But while error hunters and die chasers dominated one side of the 1964 pennies legend, the emotional stories made the coin immortal. A woman named Patricia, now 74, recalled how her late husband gave her a penny taped to a handwritten note the night before he shipped out to Vietnam in 1964. It read, "I'll bring you change for this one." He never returned. For 50 years, she kept that penny sealed in a locket. It was darkened with age, its luster faded, but when her granddaughter submitted it for grading as a tribute, the results were surprising. MS-64 brown with bold luster undertone, minor die clash marks visible. A specialist offered her $4,000. She refused to sell. To her, it was priceless, because sometimes, the value of a coin isn't in its rarity, condition, or error. Sometimes, it's in what it carried. A touch. A promise. A memory frozen in metal. As the legend of the 1964 penny spread, so did the obsession. Collectors began organizing statewide penny hunts. Bank tellers received requests for entire bags of cents, $50, $100, even $500 at a time. Some rolled their eyes. Others played along. A few even joined in, finding treasures themselves. Entire families got involved. Fathers and sons. Grandmothers and their curious, wide-eyed grandchildren. Each coin examined like an ancient relic. Each D and P scrutinized for doubling, floating roofs, misplaced digits, and then, as if summoned by fate, another miracle happened. In late 2024, an Arizona family cleaning out their late grandfather's farmhouse stumbled upon an old wooden cigar box sealed with tape. Inside were dozens of carefully stacked penny rolls, each one hand-labeled in the same neat handwriting. The top roll read, "Pennies from 1964, the last honest year." Inside that roll was a single coin that glowed with untouched copper brilliance. It was as if it had never been touched. Never breathed on. The luster danced under the kitchen light like it was just minted. The coin sat quietly in a drawer, its copper surface dulled by time, its story untold. It had traveled, through grocery store counters, soda machines, jacket pockets, dusty glove compartments. A single cent overlooked, underappreciated. Until one day, it caught someone's eye, not for its shine, but for something strange. The date, 1987. The small D mint mark beneath it. And then, that subtle flaw. A faint doubling in the lettering. A microscopic ridge along the rim. And just like that, a forgotten penny became a doorway into a much bigger story. 1987 was not a year that stood out in numismatic circles at first glance. It wasn't marked by a minting crisis, a compositional change, or an immediate spike in rarity. In fact, the Denver Mint alone struck over 4.5 billion pennies that year. They were everywhere, loose in change, spilled in couch cushions, handed to children to buy bubblegum. But that was the magic. With a mintage number so high, no one looked too closely. No one thought to check. And that, ironically, is what made some of these coins worth a fortune today. Beneath the surface of mass production, the 1987 D penny was a coin of quiet evolution. Still bearing the iconic Lincoln design, the obverse remained mostly untouched since Victor David Brenner's original engraving in 1909. Yet subtle die changes had occurred, minute shifts in relief, refinements to Lincoln's profile, and the softening of certain inscriptions to account for new minting techniques. By the 1980s, the Lincoln cent was struck on zinc planchets coated in copper, a cost-saving move introduced in 1982. This transition from 95% copper to a copper-plated zinc core made coins lighter, cheaper, and unfortunately, more prone to flaws. Those flaws, however, would become the goldmine. The Denver Mint, with its high-speed production lines and massive output demands, operated with efficiency, but also vulnerability. Dies wore out faster. Quality control sometimes lagged. And once in a while, something unusual would escape undetected. Collectors started to notice anomalies in 1987 D pennies. Coins where the date showed doubling. Where Lincoln's eye seemed faintly shadowed. Where the word Liberty had a strange echo, like it had been printed twice. Most of these errors were dismissed by everyday spenders. But to a trained eye, they were signals, whispers from the minting floor. And for some collectors, they were the start of a lifelong obsession. One of the earliest known double die obverse varieties was found in a small town in Idaho. A coin dealer named Roger was sorting through a bulk order of wheat cents when he noticed something off in a random 1987 D penny mixed in. He set it aside. Weeks later, under magnification, he saw it clearly, a prominent doubling on "In God We Trust," visible even with the naked eye under the right lighting. The coin was submitted to PCGS and came back as a verified 1987 DDDO, MS66 red. Its auction value? $12,800. Not bad for a coin pulled from a 5-cent junk bin. That sale ignited curiosity across the collector community. Forums buzzed with discussions about lesser-known modern varieties. YouTubers and numismatic bloggers posted close-ups and tutorials. Error coin communities dug deeper. And the more people looked, the more they found. There were off-center strikes, some subtle, others dramatic. One coin surfaced with a 10% off-center strike, still showing a full date and mint mark. Its quirky appearance gave it immediate collector appeal, and despite a lower grade, it sold for $1,300 at an online auction. Then came the clipped planchets, coins with crescent-shaped bites missing from their edges. Caused when a metal strip fails to feed correctly into the blanking press, these errors are rare and visually striking. A well-centered 1987 D penny with a 15% curved clip was graded MS65 red-brown and auctioned privately for $4 250. But even beyond errors, condition began to play a critical role. Most 1987 D pennies entered circulation immediately. They were never meant to be saved. They wore down quickly. The soft copper plating scratched easily, and the zinc core corroded over time. Finding one in mint state, let alone in MS67 or higher, was almost impossible. But not entirely. In 2021, a man named Elmer from Wisconsin purchased a sealed box of uncirculated penny rolls from a retired coin distributor. Inside one of those Denver rolls sat a coin unlike any he had ever seen. It was glowing with a deep, fiery red luster. Perfect rims. Razor-sharp details. No visible marks under 10x magnification. He held onto it for a year before submitting it. The grade came back, MS68 red, population, 1, it was the finest known 1987 D cent ever graded at the time. Experts debated whether a higher specimen even existed. Bidding for the coin reached a fever pitch. The final sale price, $113,000. That record-breaking sale shifted the way collectors looked at modern pennies. It wasn't just about age anymore. It was about scarcity and perfection. Because finding a flawless coin in a sea of billions is like finding a glowing ember in a field of ash. It takes patience, luck, and a little bit of magic. The coin's value wasn't just monetary. It was symbolic. Proof that even in the most common things, greatness can hide. That a coin you might have in your junk drawer or piggy bank could secretly be worth more than a car. And as collectors continue to search, the legend of the 1987 D penny grows. Stories keep surfacing. One man in Nevada found a brilliant uncirculated specimen with full red luster and a strong die crack running from the rim to Lincoln's lapel. Another in North Carolina uncovered a dramatic broadstrike, no rim, warped edges, but a full, clear design. Graded MS64, it fetched over $2,800 online. Each discovery adds another layer to the mystery. Another chapter in the ongoing saga of this unassuming cent, and somewhere, perhaps in a mason jar, under a car seat, or in a forgotten penny roll at the back of a closet, might rest the next great find. The one with doubling no one's seen yet. The perfect strike. The rare off-metal planchet. A hidden gem waiting to rewrite its owner's life. In the summer of 1987, the Denver Mint was buzzing with activity. The sounds of hissing hydraulics, clanging conveyors, and the low mechanical growl of coin presses filled the air in rhythmic harmony. Over 1,000 employees worked in shifts around the clock, and every second, pennies rained down from the presses like copper snow. Workers moved with robotic speed, loading planchets, maintaining dies, inspecting samples, but even with the highest level of efficiency, perfection was elusive. And in that chaos, in that rapid-fire environment, a handful of coins came out, different. The minting process, though engineered to be precise, had its blind spots. Dies wore down faster than expected. Machines jammed. The softer copper plating could blister if temperatures fluctuated by mere degrees. Coins would occasionally get stamped with rotating dies, leading to rotated die strikes. One 1987 D penny showed Lincoln upright while the reverse sat at a 90-degree tilt, an error so rare that it attracted a bidding war. That odd rotation added nearly $8,000 to its price tag at auction. Across the nation, interest in coins was quietly blooming. The late 1980s brought a wave of casual collectors, parents buying proof sets for their children, kids sifting through lunch money for wheat pennies. The U.S. Mint ran national campaigns to promote coin collecting as an educational hobby. Libraries carried coin guides. TV specials featured rare coins found in circulation. And amidst all that excitement, the 1987 D penny slipped quietly into pockets, wallets, and eventually, into jars of spare change, seemingly nothing more than a space filler, but behind closed doors, dealers knew otherwise. In small coin shops in places like Michigan, Oregon, and New Mexico, whispers of high-grade 1987 D cents started to circulate. Most were dull and spotted. But a few, just a few, were as brilliant as the day they were struck. The phrase, full red, became a kind of spell. Collectors would ask for rolls of uncirculated pennies, break them open on velvet-lined counters, and sift through them under fluorescent light, hoping for that one magic piece. And sometimes, they found it. There was a man named Willis in Oklahoma who made his living selling used books. He wasn't a coin collector, not really. But one evening, sorting through a coin jar for toll change, a penny caught his eye. It didn't look like the others. It glowed with a reddish hue, almost unreal. On a whim, he mailed it to a grading service. The coin came back MS-67 red, one of only 3 known examples at the time. It sold quietly at a regional show for $28,000. With that money, Willis paid off his debts and opened a small children's reading room in his bookstore. That 1 cent built a sanctuary for stories. Not every story had such a happy ending, though. A young couple in Pennsylvania once inherited a collection of old coins from a relative who had been an avid roll hunter. Among rolls of wheat cents and foreign coins sat a single tube labeled 1987 DBU. They didn't think much of it. They kept it for a while, then sold it off to a local pawn shop for $30. Months later, one of those coins surfaced in a PCGS population report as a top-graded specimen. It fetched $47,000. The couple found out too late. The pawn shop had flipped it to a dealer, who had it graded and sold it at auction. The lesson stung. Sometimes, treasure comes in the plainest wrapper, but it wasn't just private stories fueling the legend. The grading companies themselves began noticing something peculiar. Out of thousands of submitted 1987 D cents, the vast majority graded poorly. Even coins that appeared uncirculated often had blotchy toning, carbon spotting, or weak strikes. The copper-plated zinc planchets were incredibly reactive. A fingerprint, a breath, even a hint of moisture could leave a